One of the things I love about Newberg is that out of the division we've seen over the past few years, there are numerous amazing initiatives to promote peace. One of those initiatives is the Newberg Peace Garden, which has been spearheaded by Chris Murphy, head pastor of Newberg First Presbyterian Church, and Ciaran Hynes, a member of the church and director of quality assurance at ADEC. In this episode, we'll be discussing what Newberg Peace Garden is, how it got started, the future vision of the garden, and several unique features that really make it a great asset to our community. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, a local realtor in Newberg, a Rotarian, an ambassador for our Chamber of Commerce, and a member of several local community organizations. And whether you're new to Newberg and want to learn more about what makes this town special, or you're a local who just wants to do your part to improve your community, or you just want to learn about the great organizations out there, this podcast is for you. The Giving Town podcast is all about sharing stories of the people and organizations who give of their time and resources to make Newberg great. I also have Living in Newberg YouTube channel, which is all about what it's like living in Newberg. So if you like these podcasts, you'll probably enjoy that channel as well. This podcast is also brought to you by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group, and it's part of our mission to serve this community not only by providing amazing service to our clients, but to also help Newberg be an even better place to live. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this episode as I talk with Chris and Ciaran about Newberg Peace Garden. All right, well, Chris and Ciaran, it's great to have you guys here. I don't remember when we first started talking about the Peace Garden or the Newberg Peace Garden, but I'm excited to get this out to our community. It's a really great project that's going on there, and it's been fun to see it a few times, and there's a lot of progress that's happened even since the last time out there. So thank you guys for joining me today.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks, Daniel.
You're welcome. So this kind of came as, there's a story behind this, obviously, how this came to be. So could you guys share a little bit about how this originated? And maybe some people don't even know what the Newberg Peace Garden is. So maybe they don't even know where it's located. So kind of share the story of it, like how it started, and then also where people could find it if they wanted to check it out.
Absolutely. So I'm the pastor at Newberg First Presbyterian Church, and I've been there a little bit less than 6 years now. And Newberg First Presbyterian Church is on College Street and Mission Drive. We're right next to Jakewood Park. And we're a small church, and behind our church is property where Veritas School used to be, but they moved. And so we had this open land, and we needed to decide what to do with it. And we've created what we're calling the Newberg Peace Garden, which is a peaceful place in Newberg to bring people together for peace and unity and rest. It's a spiritual place. It's a place where people can just enter and walk around the peace path, and there's a labyrinth, and can enjoy the beauty of that place and connect to God, connect to their own spiritual journeys, and also just build relationship with people. So it started really with a vision that came to me in 2022 during Holy Week. So Holy Week is the period right before Easter. And on Good Friday of Holy Week, I was leading a prayer retreat. And during that prayer retreat, I went to the back of our church property, and I was just talking to God and saying, what are we going to do, God, with this property? We haven't figured out what to do. And I felt like God said to me, Chris, what was your original dream? And I said, well, my original dream was to create a prayer garden connected to our church so that our church could be a center for Christian spirituality in town. And God said to me, well, why don't you go with that and start leading a prayer retreat every month on the first Friday of the month, and then talk to your church about making it a peace garden or a prayer garden initially. So on Easter Sunday, I came up and gave my Easter sermon talking about the resurrection of Jesus. But in that, I also talked about how I had a vision for our property in the back to be a prayer garden. And I mentioned that when I first came to the church, I had talked to Ken Austin, who is, of course, the entrepreneur that started ADEC.
Ken Austin Sr.?
Ken Austin Sr., yes. And so I had met with Ken when I first came to the church, and I met with him 2 or 3 times, and I asked him whether he had any advice for me as a new pastor in town in terms of what the direction of the church might be. And he said, well, I won't tell you the direction, but I will ask you a question, and that is, what is something distinctive about your church that could help serve the community of Newberg? Find out your uniqueness and then use that uniqueness to serve the community. And so I remembered that. And in my sermon, I mentioned Ken talking about that and how in my heart, I had always wanted to create a place that would focus on spirituality, spiritual formation, retreats, peace. And so in my sermon, I'm talking about that. I'm talking about the vision of a prayer garden on our property. And after the sermon, Ciaran Hynes comes up to me and says he would like to be the master gardener to create this garden on our property. Now, Ciaran had just been coming to our church with his wife, Mindy, and his children for a couple months, and had already started volunteering a little bit in the back, doing some mowing of the lawn. But I was just dumbfounded that here's this person volunteering to create this garden. And as we started to talk and vision, we realized we wanted it to be called the Newberg Peace Garden. We were inspired by North Valley Friends Peace Trail and the labyrinth that was there as well. And I would often spend my day off walking the labyrinth up there at North Valley Friends Peace Trail. And so we decided we would create something kind of down College Street where our church was. We'd have a labyrinth too. We'd have our own peace path, and it would be a place that would bring peace and unity to the town. And we realized that with all the polarization that had happened in Newberg, that this could be really a gift to the town to connect people together. So that's a little bit about how we started.
Yeah. So Ciaran, what led you to say, hey, I'll be the master gardener here?
Well, I'm not sure exactly if there was a particular thing, but I've always been interested in gardening. I'm originally from Ireland and grew up, in the countryside, working the farm with my uncles and cousins, and had a small farm ourselves. And so I've always been connected with the land. I've always sort of had that affinity for the outdoors and working the land. And so my own property here in Newberg is very mature, very well established. And so I think I must have been just feeling like I was ready for a new project to take on something. But I had been, as Chris said, doing some of the basic landscaping maintenance of this about 1 acre of land in the back behind the church. And I could see this as a blank canvas. So I was very excited about this little square of land that had been well taken care of over the years, but not really a place where people could come in and enjoy it in its current state. But I could see the potential of it. I could see it in my mind's eye how we could change this into a destination, frankly, for people both in Newberg and outside of Newberg to come to and just spend time on their own or with friends or family members or whatnot to have this sort of restful, quiet place.
So tell me a little bit about what that process looked like. So I'm guessing it was just kind of a field, right? Maybe there's grass and weeds that were just kind of kept mowed down a little bit. So what does the process look like going from what it looks like right now to what it is? And maybe also if people are listening and want a visual, is there a visual somewhere online where they can look at like, what is the map of like what the plan is? Does that exist?
Yeah, we do. In fact, so we do have a Facebook page that's open for anybody to go visit. It's Newberg Peace Garden. If you're on Facebook, you'll find it pretty easily. And you might have to scroll down through a few pages of pictures to see the vision that we painted originally. But that is how it started. We sat down essentially with a blank canvas. In fact, I went onto Google Maps and downloaded an aerial photograph of the property, and from there was able to scale off of that and create sort of an artist's impression, if you like, of what this garden could be. I've done some landscape design. That's sort of in my background, and so it was easy for me. I have all the tools to do that, and so created some conceptual renderings and things of what it could be, and shared it with Chris, and I think we shared it with the church leadership group, and had phenomenal support right off the bat for this project. And then we just started to work on it.
Now, I have to say, I've been really impressed with the drawings and everything that you came up with. And I think it's probably worth noting because you're actually an engineer at ADEC, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, only an engineer could do something this good. But recently I was mentioning before we started recording a conversation that I had with Tom Mead, who's over there. And he was mentioning to me the ADEC way. And this is kind of a segue a little bit, or actually more like a rabbit hole than a segue. But how does that ADEC Way, and is part of that community service, because you've taken
Absolutely
a lot of time out to do this.
Yeah. I've been very blessed to be part of the ADEC family now for over 18 years, and very much inspired by Ken and Joanne Austin and their philanthropy and giving back to the community, especially here in Newberg. And so that's always been sort of deeply rooted in my view on how I should behave and help support the community. So again, it was a great tie-in for this project to participate in that way, because you're absolutely right. Of the 15 principles of the ADEC Way, showing concern for people, but caring for your community and going above and beyond yourself is a big part of that. And I get to continue Ken and Joanne's legacy in that sense. And this is my way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to the Newberg Peace Garden, from the time and when did you actually start? When was this process taking place? When you actually...
One of the things that happened after Ciaran said he would create the garden with me was that we received grant money from Portland Theological Seminary. It's a grant called Thriving Congregations Grant. And we received about $10,000 over a couple of years. We received a larger grant, but the portion that was given towards the Peace Garden was about $10,000. And so that gave us some initial funding. And then basically Ciaran started a vision with us about how to actually use that money to create the garden. So that was a little bit how it got going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did the actual work you start on the ground?
So we officially broke ground, I want to say around early July of 2022. So it hasn't been very long.
Mm-hmm.
And it is quite remarkable to look back at how much we've gotten done in such a short space of time. And I think that is a testament to some of our community partners. We've had 2 George Fox Serve Day crews now come out and work very hard in the Peace Garden. We've had several teams over from ADEC. We've had some of the Rotary clubs get involved and things like that. So we're building tremendous momentum, getting a lot of work done in a pretty short space of time.
Yeah, the George Fox students actually created the labyrinth. And a labyrinth is a circular path that is really a path where you can release your emotions and also just experience peace. It can be a prayer path, and it's been used in Christian circles for hundreds of years. And so it's a wonderful part of the garden, and really the George Fox students made it happen that first Serve Day that they participated with us, helping make the garden. So yeah, we've seen wonderful help from the community.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that with the labyrinth, because I'm a very, my degree was also in engineering, so I can be very pragmatic or logical. To me, it doesn't quite fit in with how my brain normally works. Like, why don't I just step across the stones and walk out?
Yeah.
So what is the design of a labyrinth? There's intention there. So how does that actually work to do what you're describing?
Yeah. People look at a labyrinth and they first think it's a maze. They think it's some kind of path where you'll hit a dead end and have to reverse and figure out where to go. But it's not. It's actually a path that if you follow it from the outside in, it'll take you into the center eventually, but it takes about 15 minutes walking slowly. And then when you come to the center, you just kind of rest there and experience peace. While you're walking in, you may be praying about some area in your life you need some help from God, or you may just be working through some of your emotions or just enjoying the walk. But as you come into the center, you release any needs you have to God, and then you pray for God's love to just enfold you. And then you walk out the same way you came in. So it's a very restful experience. It's kinesthetic, as you're walking and reflecting. And it's used in a lot of different environments in terms of spirituality groups, because it's been part of history of spirituality, and it connects you to nature and to the beauty that's outside too. So you'll see it at a lot of retreat centers, and that's kind of how you use a labyrinth.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting to know. I'll have to go try that sometime, and knowing that, okay, you enter one way. Now, is there signage there that says like, hey, here's what a labyrinth is, here's how to use this?
So we do have a trifold brochure, a little flyer right now that describes the background of that.
At the labyrinth itself on site?
Not yet, but we're working on putting up just a little waterproof display case so that we can stuff those in there. That'll be coming here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be interesting, because I would be the type of person I'd go and like, what am I supposed to to do with this? So thanks for that. That's helpful.
Absolutely.
The other question I had when you were talking earlier is the distinction between a prayer garden and peace garden. So how did you come up with the vision was for a prayer garden?
Yes.
And now it's Newberg Peace Garden. How did that transition happen?
We really want this to be an inclusive place for people from lots of different backgrounds, different faith backgrounds, different spiritual backgrounds, people that identify with faith, people that may not identify with faith, but just want to enjoy a peaceful place. So we knew the word peace is a very universal term that connects folks together. And we thought calling it Newberg Peace Garden would both build on the good work that's been done with North Valley Friends with the Peace Trail, and they sort of see a connection there, but also it would contribute to this peace project that a lot of us are working on in Newberg, that it would be a place that people would just know, okay, if I come here and enjoy this place, I'm going to experience peace. And because it's open to the community, it's fostering peace for different folks and people. It's supposed to be really welcoming to people of all cultures, all different backgrounds, a safe place for everyone.
In that way, so by calling it a prayer garden, people could get potentially the wrong idea,
Right.
feel excluded.
Yeah, a prayer garden certainly is how we use it at times, but the idea of calling it a peace garden is it's not necessarily always for like a Christian event, but it can be for anyone that just wants to find a comfortable place to enjoy some time.
Yeah, and anyone is welcome at any time to go and use it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be open, when the sun comes up, and when the sun goes down, it'll be closed. And it's designed so that people who come onto the property and use it, it's a sacred place, so it should be a quiet place generally. We'll have some events that may be a little different, where we'll have music or some gatherings for children. That'll feel a little different, but just the general use will be quiet, reflective space.
And there's also, but actually, maybe this would be a question for you, Ciaran, is describing a little bit in case people are driving or they can't actually look up what it looks like. Can you describe some of the different features?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, so the whole garden is about an acre, so it's a good size, and it's like, as Chris said, in behind the church. There's a peace trail, first of all, and I've not measured it out yet. I'm curious to see actually how long this trail is altogether, but there's a series of loops, and part of my intent with the design for the garden is that you can experience it in a different way every time you visit it. And so if you want to just take a short loop and just a quick walk around, you can do that. There's a more extensive loop. You can approach it in different ways and take different paths. Basically, they fork and rejoin and different things like that. So that's maybe the first feature is the paths. And that's completely done. That's finished and ready for use. As Chris mentioned, we have the labyrinth. It's about a 60-foot diameter labyrinth modeled off of very similar to the North Valley Church labyrinth, although in our case, ours is primarily gravel with river rock. So it's got some fun character to it, I think. We have several park benches to just come and sit quietly, rest, read, reflect, whatever it is you want to do. And we'll be adding more benches over time. We also have plans to build a small amphitheater. And I'm very excited about that because I see that as being one of the key features of the garden in the future, where we will be able to host outdoor book studies, Bible studies, music sessions, open mic type things. Not quite sure exactly how it's going to play out yet, but we have this idea that we can use this labyrinth for small crowd sort of gatherings, the fall evenings or the summer afternoons and things, to really enjoy the space. So that's the amphitheater. We've only roughed that in at this stage. There's a lot of work still to do with that. And then we have several large open grassy areas where people can come for, outdoor picnics or just sit quietly on blankets or whatever they choose. Sometime in the future, we may open it up for events like outdoor weddings or Easter egg hunts and different things like that. So there's a lot of potential in that regard. The newest part of the garden, and something that I'm so thankful to our friends at the Newberg Rotary Peace Committee for, is we have what we're calling our Zen garden. And it's just a small piece of the garden very close to the church buildings, where we have actually installed a ginkgo tree as a centerpiece. And this ginkgo tree is one of two ginkgo trees the seeds of these trees, as I understand it, came from a ginkgo tree in Hiroshima that survived the atomic bomb. And so it's a very, very special tree for us to have. And it just tells this remarkable story. And I've got the biography of this parent tree. So we'll link it on the website so you can read about it. Just a phenomenal story, and we're just really proud to have that as a centerpiece in our garden. It's surrounded by a sort of a gravel zen area, so to speak, with large boulders, and eventually we'll add some peace poles and things to finish out that feature of the garden. It's pretty cool.
And one of the things I remember you mentioning is it's designed in a certain way so that you can't see the rest of the garden from any one point, right? So you have to move through it, right?
Right. That was a big part of my vision as well. And that's just sort of part of my style of landscape design, is that I don't want to be able to see the entire garden from any one vantage point, that you have to move through it. And that allows you then to experience the garden in different ways, depending on the approach you take. I think it's taking shape that way. We're still working on the landscaping in the sense of trees and shrubs and things like that. That will eventually fill out and help fulfill that vision. But even already leveraging the existing old growth trees that are there and different things, you do have to move through it to see the whole thing, which is really fun.
Mm-hmm. When do you think it's going to be finished to the point where it is kind of in that mature state?
That is the big question. You know, when I think about the initial heavy lift of installing the paths and the big features, we're probably somewhere around 80% complete of that initial heavy lift. But the reality for a garden like this is that it may never be done, in the sense that we will always be adding, trees and shrubs and refining the design. And who knows, somebody from the community might come to us with a great idea for a feature that I would love to talk through and see if it's a possibility. And we would then, find a way to add that if it made sense. Mm-hmm. So I see it as it's a multi-year investment for all of us, commitment. And, we'll continue to allow it evolve and develop as the community uses it. We're going to see how it gets used and what maybe it's missing, if we need to add some things, and we'll respond accordingly.
Yeah. When I was there when was the last time I was there? Sometime during the summer, which, we're recording this, like, fall just started.
Yeah.
But the trails, I think, hadn't quite been completed. So the trails are now done.
Trails are done, yeah.
And like you said, that heavy lift of actually getting everything kind of in place. How far are we, do you think, until that part is done?
I would think reasonably, late spring, early summer next year, that we could target a sort of a grand opening, so to speak. Even though it's open now and people can come and visit, and we welcome people to come and visit the garden anytime, in terms of an official, grand launch, I would think early summer next year, 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. It's great. I know sometimes when you're there, like you mentioned, there's laurels along. And I really encourage you to, if you're listening, to look at the plans and actually go there yourself. It's really beautiful. But as those laurels grow that are right next to Jakewith Park there, the tennis courts and all that, I think as those things will continue to be even more private, and I imagine it's really going to be a gem for the town. Mm-hmm. So for each of you, what's the one thing that makes you really excited about this?
I think for me, it goes back to Ken Austin's, advice and wanting to, give me the encouragement to do something distinctive with our church that actually serves the community. There's a lot of wonderful churches in town doing wonderful things. And because my heart is as a spiritual director and prayer retreat leader, I always dreamed that our church could be a center for Christian spirituality that really reached people, both folks, again, that connected to traditional church and people who are just interested in maybe a spiritual journey that don't fit those classic categories. And to have a peace garden that welcomes everyone of all economic levels, of all different cultures, and it is a tangible example of what we're trying to foster in town in terms of the light of Christ bringing peace. It's just really exciting. And I get excited when I see families come on to the property, when I see people just walk on and want to check it out. I get excited that the people are experiencing God's creation in a positive way on our property. I just feel like we need more and more spaces dedicated to reflection and prayer and bringing peace and unity to town. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. And I would definitely echo that too. I think for me also, I would add that, this is my way to give back to our community. You know, I've lived in Newberg since the early 2000s. I think 2001 is when we officially moved here. And my family and I just love this town. This is our home. And we've seen a lot of change and a lot of good change. And sadly, in recent times, we've seen a lot of division. And so this is, I think, for me, it's a way that I can contribute to our community to bring us back together, to help us come together as friends, as neighbors, as people who need one another, frankly, in different ways. And also in doing so, kind of my part of helping to fulfill, you mentioned Ken Austin, I'll mention them again, Ken and Joanne's vision and legacy for Newberg. We see their fingerprints all over our town. And I feel like this is my way that I can contribute as a NADAC employee to do that.
Yeah. One question I've kind of just been thinking about since we've been talking is you as a master gardener, and that term makes me think, I don't know if there's somewhere specifically in the Bible where it calls God a master gardener, but there's this picture of God being this master gardener in our lives. I'm curious what kind of parallels you've, if any, if you've kind of seen any, like lessons you've learned as being a gardener, or just that can generally be applied.
Well, it's a great question. It's a tough one. I wouldn't put myself anywhere near on that plane, but you know, I enjoy seeing the fruits of my labor as it relates to that, as, you know, planting seeds or propagating shrubs and different things, just to see them come to life. It's just, there's something really magical and special about that, and spiritual about that. And so that's something that's important to me. I just get tremendous satisfaction from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I kind of put you on the spot with that, but I just love, there's always so many parallels in nature that are just fun to think about. And I think gardening, a lot of people connect to God through nature. Yeah, I hear that a lot. And I'm not much of a gardener. I wish I was, but I always just think, I'm sure there's a lot of parallels, like being as a dad, for example, you kind of learn a new side of like, oh, okay, that's what it means that, you know, God as a father and us as parents.
Yeah. But can I jump in with one quick thought? Is just that when you think of the story of creation, again, both for the Hebrew peoples and as we look also at the Christian tradition, it starts in Genesis. It starts with the garden. And when you think about the resurrection of Jesus, he meets Mary Magdalene in a garden. And a lot of the imagery even of heaven is very creation-based and garden-like. And so there's just a lot of connection spiritually, I think, for many people. And as I look at Ciaran as someone created in the image of God, God is the great artist, and then we're created in God's image as artists too. And so I personally feel great joy in watching Ciaran use his gifts as an artist and to serve God in that way. And it's a wonderful reflection of God in him, his being made in the image of God. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So as far as updates and progress, where can people go to learn more about this? Is there an email newsletter that people can sign up? Is there a website?
Yeah, right now we have our Facebook page essentially is the primary means where we post progress pictures. We talk about volunteer days where if we're pulling a work party together for a particular task. So again, it's Newberg Peace Garden, very easy to find on Facebook. We do need to, though, we're at that point where we've sort of built up that critical mass of interest and energy behind the project where we need to now expand and have a dedicated garden website and a mailing list, newsletter, and so forth. So if that's something that somebody listening is interested in, please reach out to me via the Facebook page if you're on Facebook.
Yeah, that can be a tough transition when it's like, okay, that's a great idea, but who's going to do it? And you can't be a gardener and a social media expert and all that all at once.
Yeah. Can I mention, we've been grateful for all the partners in town that have helped thus far. And Ciaran mentioned the Rotary Club. We also, they donated a bench. We also have a bench donated by Kiwanis Club. And again, lots of different groups have partnered from our community and our church too. But we're looking for more and more partners that both want to volunteer. And we're hoping to raise another $10,000 this year to continue to finish that initial stage of our garden. So we're just interested in creative ideas of how to use this space again to bless the town. So yeah, that's a little more where we're in terms of next steps.
And for people who might be interested in making contributions, what with those funds, what would that allow you to be able to do?
So there's a few significant things. I mentioned already the amphitheater. That's probably one big sort of module, if you like, one feature that we're still working to fundraise for. But there's other things too. We did put in an initial irrigation system, but we need to advance that. Obviously, the summers are getting hotter. It seems like they're getting longer, but we will need to install more irrigation. I want to install some accent lighting so that maybe, as the evenings draw in the fall and during the winter, that we can still enjoy the garden when the sun does go down, that we have accent lighting around the paths and different things. And there's other things too, like security cameras. Unfortunately, it's a necessity. So there are things like that, not to mention, of course, the trees and shrubs themselves and adding more benches and features like that as well. So, we're always on the lookout for community partners that are interested in getting involved. We have had some family members sponsor and donate benches in memory of family members that passed away and things like that, which is really touching, because what we do is we learn about the family, and we sort of, it's not just plonk a bench down in the garden, but it's actually build it into the garden and build features around that bench so that it truly becomes sort of part of that person's persona. If they had a particular flower or color or tree or shrub or bird or animal, something that we want to incorporate those things into their piece of the Peace Garden.
That's really beautiful. And
Yeah.
what a wonderful way to honor someone's legacy in a way that's not everlasting, but, as close to that as you can get, really.
One example of that was a man named Alan Kolb, who took care of our back property before we knew what we wanted to do with it. But he was very dedicated, and he passed away a few months, actually, about the time Ciaran was coming. And so Shirley Cole, in honor of Alan, had a bench donated and some trees donated, and they're now located right next to the labyrinth. So it's a special way that she was able to honor her husband.
Yeah. So if people do want to contribute or get involved, how can they reach you? Through the Facebook page? Is that the best way?
Through the Facebook page. I'm happy to provide my contact details in your blog or in your podcast, if that's possible, that people can reach out to me directly via email.
Email would be, what's a good email for?
So my email, the email address I've been using for this project is my George Fox email. So I didn't mention, but I do teach part-time at Fox. And so it's Hynes, so CHYNES @georgefox.edu. And that's a great way to get in touch with me directly to talk about volunteer opportunities or opportunities to get involved with features in the garden from a sponsorship type perspective as well.
Okay. Well, one final question that I didn't prepare you with, but what is, with your involvement with the Peace Garden, and you've gotten to know a lot of different organizations through your involvement, but what is something that gives you hope for the future of Newberg?
I think that our Newberg Peace Garden is one of many things happening in town. The Civility Project, the other efforts that are trying to bring people together for conversation. There's been some wonderful forums learning more about houselessness in town. I've been really appreciative of United Neighbors and all the good work that's being done to just say, let's learn from each other. Let's partner together. Let's work for peace and justice. Let's work for listening to each other's stories and perspectives. So I feel like there's a movement right now that is really positive, bringing people together. And I have hope because of that. I feel like the Holy Spirit is at work to help us go towards the future in a way that is positive and that seeks unity and peace. So I just feel like there's a lot of history in this town full of wonderful gifts, and a lot of new people coming to Newberg too, bringing their gifts and their passions. So it's a growing community. I love that we're in wine country. I love that we're in such a beautiful place. I love the faith communities here. There's so much hope, and I think we're ready to vision together again.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a quote by that I heard, at least not attributed to Dr. Joe Morlock, but he said it one night, one infamous night, that after the darkest dark comes the brightest light. And I feel like that we've turned that corner, that we may not have seen the brightest light yet, but the darkest dark is over, and we're in this healing time for our community. And so that gives me hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. It's been fun getting to see the progress. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I really do think this is an amazing gift to our community to take land. The land is a very valuable asset, and to do something and open it up to the community really says a lot for the character and I think the mission of your church. So thank you. It's been great talking to you both, and look forward to continuing to go and see the progress on the Peace Garden.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel, and for all you're doing.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.